On the day the river god's oracle descended upon the Khoi clan to choose a bride, my adopted sister secretly took my place in the bridal sedan. Meanwhile, under my parents' arrangement, I married an ordinary Khoi from our own clan. Unexpectedly, after marrying the river god, my sister never once laid eyes on him, and when the god perished and his temple collapsed, she was crippled by the falling debris. Yet my husband, a mere Khoi, leaped over the dragon gate, transformed into a dragon, and brought both me and our child to the divine realm. We became the fairy tale couple envied by all in the aquatic realm. When I returned to my Hui ethnic hometown to visit my parents, my foster sister poisoned my food and stabbed me multiple times in the heart with a sinister laugh. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of the divine oracle's bride selection. This time, my foster sister didn't take my place in marriage. Instead, she painstakingly dragged me out from my cave cultivation and personally sent me to the wedding sedan. She raised her eyebrows triumphantly and said to me, "Sister, you go be the river god's wife and enjoy this heavenly opportunity. I'll reluctantly make do and marry your childhood sweetheart instead." How would a mere clam spirit like her know the secret of a carp leaping over the dragon gate? Her husband won't transform into a dragon this time. After the river god's divine decree for choosing a wife circulated among the aquatic clans, the bridal sedan chair finally stopped at the carp clan. My adopted sister Evelina bent over and reached out, struggling to pull me out from the deep cave where I was cultivating. "Sister, why are you still cultivating here? The river god's bridal sedan has stopped at the Khoi clan, and our parents are looking for you everywhere." Scenes from my past life before death flashed before my eyes. My face turned pale as I clutched my chest, gasping for breath, but Evelina pretended not to notice, cheerfully grabbing my hand. "The river god is choosing a bride from the Khoi clan, and currently, you're the only suitable candidate for marriage. Our parents are overjoyed right now." By the time I figured out the reason for my rebirth, I had already arrived at my doorstep. The river god's bridal sedan was parked not far from my home, followed by chest after chest of betrothal gifts. Surrounded by clansfolk whose eyes were filled with either envy or regret, I laughed. My parents looked in our direction, thinking only Evelina was there, and waved at her, but when their gaze fell upon me behind Evelina, their waving hands froze midair, looking rather comical. From a distance, Evelina shouted to our parents, "Father, Mother, I've brought sister back, let's hurry and send her into the bridal sedan." As we approached, Evelina couldn't wait to push me into the bridal sedan. Mother swiftly stopped her movement, pulling Evelina aside and whispering, "Since this bridal sedan is parked here, even you could board it if you wanted. Don't you wish?" Evelina repeatedly refused. "Mother, I'm not from the Khoi clan, how could I bear such fortune? It's best for sister to go." I stood by, sneering coldly. I'm now absolutely certain that Evelina has been reborn just like me, otherwise, she would have surely seized this seemingly great opportunity as she did in her previous life. Mother glanced at me, then turned to comfort Evelina softly. "Our Khoi clan has many outstanding young men. We'll have your father carefully select the best match for you." She acted as if afraid Evelina might suffer any grievance, treating her as if she were her own biological daughter. Evelina blushed and smiled coyly. "Mother, your daughter and Saul have long been deeply attached. I wish to marry Saul." Mother hesitated. "But Saul shares a special bond with your elder sister. If you marry him, he may not treat you sincerely." "That won't happen." Evelina turned to look at me. "Sister, why are you still standing outside? Hurry into the bridal sedan. Don't delay the river god's auspicious hour." As she spoke, she pushed me into the sedan chair. Seeing this, our parents could only fetch my bundle from home. Not a trace of reluctance could be seen in my parents' eyes. A stark contrast to the image from my past life where they chased the bridal sedan halfway down the road. I took the light and small bundle, my expression indifferent as I let the sedan curtain fall. As the bridal sedan was about to depart, Evelina lifted the curtain and gloated, "Sister, you'll become the river god's wife and enjoy this tremendous fortune. I'll just have to make do and marry your childhood sweetheart." As the curtain dropped, I chuckled softly in relief. Even after being reborn, Evelina's mind remains as simple as a child's. Did she really think leaping over the dragon gate was that easy? Saul, in this life, will forever remain just a koi fish. Evelina was originally born to her parents' friends in the clam tribe. Later, when the clam tribe was poisoned by humans for their pearls, nearly the entire clan was wiped out, and her parents adopted her. If it weren't for my parents bringing Evelina to play at our house that day, even she would have surely died. Evelina was born delicate and adorable, with a more pleasing personality than mine. Soon, she became the favorite daughter in my parents' hearts. In the previous life, when the river god's bridal sedan arrived at the Khoi clan, my parents first considered Evelina. Coincidentally, Evelina also had the intention to marry the river god. They hit it off immediately, and Evelina secretly took my place to board the bridal sedan that rightfully belonged to me. No one informed me while I was cultivating in the cave. It wasn't until I emerged that I learned from my clansmen that I had been married off to the river god. Evelina thought that by marrying the river god in my stead and becoming his wife, she could ascend to heaven in one step, becoming the most noble woman among the aquatic clans here, but she never imagined that since her marriage to the river god's temple, she had never seen the river god in daylight nor exchanged a single word with him. Her only contact with the river god was their conjugal visits every few nights in pitch darkness, where the river god remained silent and rough. As Evelina's marriage progressed, the river god's nocturnal visits became increasingly infrequent until they ceased altogether. In the frigid palace, Evelina lived in solitary loneliness, yet when returning to her clan, she pretended the river god treated her exceptionally well, with only the faintest glimmer of tears at her eyes betraying her true circumstances. Later, the river god suddenly perished for unknown reasons, causing his temple to collapse violently and churn up murky waters and sludge across a 100-mile radius. Her parents led the clan to investigate the ruined river god temple, where they discovered Evelina buried beneath the rubble, severely injured and disabled, with greatly diminished cultivation. Evelina was taken back home by her parents again. By then, Saul and I had been married for 3 years, not only in perfect harmony but also blessed with 10 children, becoming the enviable model couple in the clan. Saul had long shed his former mediocrity, his cultivation soaring to new heights, just one step away from leaping over the Dragon's Gate. In the second month of Evelina's recovery among the Hui people, Saul leaped over the Dragon Gate against the emerald waters and setting sun, transforming into a dragon in one bound, astonishing the entire aquatic realm. After ascending to the divine realm and settling everything, Saul did not forget to bring me and our children along to the divine realm. That day, my parents asked several times for me to bring Evelina to the divine realm, but Saul refused. Before departing, I turned back for one last look, only to see Evelina staring at me with tear-filled eyes. The unwillingness and jealousy in her eyes were like a sharp blade, piercing me to the core. Later, when I returned to my clan to visit my parents, Evelina poisoned the food, weakly collapsing onto the table. I watched her slay my disbelieving parents before turning the blade toward my heart. Lyra, did you foresee Saul's dragon transformation and conspire with these 2 old fools to marry me off to the river god? The blood from my heart pulsed, staining the surrounding clear water crimson. Amidst the hazy crimson mist, I saw with terrifying clarity the ghastly grin on Evelina's face. You all conspired against me, just to prevent me from marrying Saul. Brother Saul clearly said he loved me most. It's all your fault for stealing my place by his side. Now he won't even glance at me. You deserve to die. The gentle chime of water bells outside the bridal sedan pulled my thoughts back from memories of my past life. Clutching my faintly aching chest, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. In this life, Evelina chose to marry Saul, determined to become the wife of the divine dragon, but without external stimuli. Would this big slacker Saul still train as diligently as in his previous life? The bridal sedan soon arrived at the river god's temple. The river god's temple was austerely decorated, with only 2 large red lanterns hanging under the eaves outside the hall, barely hinting at today's joyous occasion. Until night fell, no one came to lift my red bridal veil. I don't know how long I waited, perhaps until midnight. When I was nearly succumbing to sleep, the sound of clear footsteps gradually reached my ears. Opening my eyes, I couldn't see a single glimmer of light. The few luminous pearls that illuminated the hall seemed to have been covered with black cloth, concealing all traces of brightness. In the absolute darkness, my bridal veil was lifted by someone. Then, a pair of icy large hands pressed against my cheeks. I wanted to speak, but as soon as I tried, I found myself unable to utter a word. The river god lurking in the darkness silenced me. Layer by layer, my clothes were stripped away, and a bone-chilling coldness spread from my exposed skin in the water, rushing straight to the crown of my head. That night was silent and interminably long, too, as the first light outside the temple shone in. My half-opened eyes were about to perceive the river god upon me when he covered them, making me close my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I was the only one left in the river god's temple. The faint glow of the night pearls reappeared within the temple, restoring light to its halls. Only my scattered clothes remained by the bed, and only my breathing echoed in the temple. Apart from the lingering scent of the river god on me, there was no trace left of his presence. Lying on my back in bed, I suddenly burst out laughing. In her past life, Evelina's wedding night must have been just like mine, and every night thereafter, just like today. But on the day she returned to her hometown, she stubbornly maintained her pride, claiming the river god cherished and loved her like a treasure. To prevent us from seeing her misery, she overturned the clothes and food prepared by her parents, and mocked Saul, who had been quietly concerned about her. It was those very words of insult that ignited Saul's determination to cultivate the art of dragon transformation. I rubbed my sore and swollen wrist. carefully recalling every detail from last night, not speaking, not meeting, not allowing me to touch the skin on his back. Why is the river god behaving so unusually? I've heard from fellow anglers in other waters who've seen their local river gods. They say their deities are both kind and majestic, occasionally even bestowing blessings and healing, but our waterway's river god hasn't appeared for nearly a century. Also, why did the river god from my past life suddenly perish? After a month of marriage, the river god appeared fewer than 10 times, and each appearance inevitably silenced me as we shared the chamber in wordless intimacy. During the day, I stayed alone in the empty temple to cultivate, eating the food prepared for me by the river god. The days weren't too hard to bear, perhaps life had become too comfortable, and coupled with the river god's nightly antics, I gradually began to feel somewhat drained during the day. Just as I was secretly wondering if the river god was secretly siphoning my energy, a fellow koi fish came to see me outside the temple. Beyond the river god temple's barrier, the young koi fish called out to me, "Sister Lyra, your clam spirit sister is going to marry brother Saul. The clan leader sent me to tell you. Would you like to return with me to attend the wedding, for such a solemn matter?" My father only sent a child to the river god's temple. Suppressing my anger, I gently asked him, "Why did you come alone?" The little koi blinked and said, "The clan leader and his wife originally planned to send dozens of elder brothers and sisters to invite you and the river god, but after your clam spirit sister spoke to them, I became the only one sent." Hearing this, I couldn't help but clench my fists. I knew my parents liked Evelina, but I never expected they'd even follow her advice on something as important as inviting the river god. Evelina had memories of her past life, so naturally she knew the river god wouldn't leave his temple, but my parents didn't know that, yet they still weren't afraid the river god might actually punish them for their disrespect. No, my parents had always put Evelina first in their hearts, otherwise, in our past life, they wouldn't have agreed to let Evelina take my place in the marriage. I returned to the center of the river god's temple, standing hesitantly before the stone statue of the deity. For the past month, the barrier of the river god temple has remained unopened. Will the river god permit me to return to my clan? Just as I was about to speak, the little koi outside the hall exclaimed in surprise, "Sister Lyra, I actually got in. Wow, there's so much food here I've never seen before." The little koi gazed at me eagerly, and I smiled as I packed him a large bag of silver shrimp and red fish, delicacies rarely eaten in the clan. Before departing, I glanced back at the unmoving stone statue of the river god, a faint glimmer of darkness flashing in my eyes. Evelina and Saul's wedding banquet was grand, attended not only by the koi clan but also by neighboring aquatic tribes friendly with the koi. They congratulated Evelina and her parents, praising the couple as a perfect match made in heaven. Spotting me, Evelina eagerly lifted her heavy, ornate wedding dress and came towards me. "Sister, look at my wedding gown." Mother sewed it herself, and it's adorned with pearls I produced. They shimmer brilliantly at night, truly magnificent. Saul followed cautiously behind her, afraid she might fall. I said indifferently, "Congratulations to both of you." Evelina was dissatisfied with my bland reaction and pouted, "Sister, with such a long face, could it be you're jealous of me? Well, when you married the river god in haste, you didn't even get to wear a wedding dress, just a red veil before being carried away. Indeed, this wedding dress I'm wearing now is too dazzling." "No," I smiled and interrupted her, glancing at Saul who was beaming with happiness beside us. "In the previous life, Evelina married the river god, becoming the unattainable white moonlight in Saul's heart. For Evelina's sake, Saul treated me coldly after our marriage, using me only as a tool, never sincerely caring for me. In this life, he got his wish. This also means he lost the motivation to transform into a dragon, having been married to him for years. I know all too well his couch potato nature. Without any life goals, he can't even be bothered to turn himself over." Evelina grew displeased at me staring at Saul for too long, shoving me. "Sister, why are you gazing at Saul so obsessively? Though you've known him longer than I have, I'm his wife now." When I didn't respond, Evelina's movements grew rougher. I meant to block with my hands, but a sudden dizziness nearly made me lose my footing. My parents appeared beside me and said, "It's your sister's joyous occasion. Why must you upset her? Had we known this would happen, we wouldn't have sent for you to come back." The clamoring in my ears made my head throb. Just as I was about to slap Evelina to end this matter, I suddenly felt darkness before my eyes and my body uncontrollably sliding downward, yet I didn't actually collapse to the ground. Someone suddenly appeared and caught me, eliciting gasps of surprise from those around. "It's the river god. Hail the river god." Meanwhile, Evelina's astonished voice rang particularly clear in my ears. "Impossible. How could the river god leave the temple? For I was carried back to the river god's temple by the deity." "No, you can't say hug." The river god's entire body was enveloped in mist-like spiritual energy, which swirled around me and gently placed me on the bed. I stared at this mass of mist, but couldn't make out even his silhouette clearly, let alone his face. If not for that distinctive section of his dragon tail, who would have guessed he was the river god? The mist was about to leave, and I hurriedly got out of bed, wanting to hold him. The mist dodged, its muffled and hoarse voice echoing through the temple. "You're pregnant. Stay in the temple to rest during this time and don't run around." His words left me stunned, rooted to the spot. I caressed my still flat belly and murmured to myself, "No wonder I've been feeling so exhausted lately," and almost fainted today. The great fog split off a wisp of mist to touch my belly, then vanished instantly. After that, the river god still only appeared at night, but came almost every evening. We shared no carnal pleasures. Through the thick darkness, he stood by the bed, silently gazing at my belly, occasionally bending down to gently caress it. If not for sensing the calm and peaceful aura around him, I would have suspected he wanted to dig out the little one in my belly and devour it in one bite. Starting one night, he no longer silenced me. As he placed his hand on my round, swollen belly, I suddenly spoke softly, "Does my lord truly adore children?" The large hand on my belly paused in surprise for a moment before quickly withdrawing. I quickly grabbed the river god's hand. "The little one adores you dearly. He always becomes especially lively whenever you touch him." The river god tried to gently pull his hand away, but couldn't free it. The river god pulled harder, and as I lifted my heavy body, warm tears fell onto his palm. "I talk to our babies every day and can sense they want to hear your voice too. Why do you always remain silent? Don't you want to speak to them before they're born?" The river god's withdrawing hand paused as warm tears pooled in his palm, the heat making his fingers curl involuntarily. After a long silence came that same hoarse, muffled voice as before. My voice isn't pleasant. I'm afraid I might frighten you." I burst into laughter, pulling the river god who was trying to escape back down with both hands. "Don't worry, this is your own child. How could they be afraid of their own father?" The river god fell silent for a moment before asking me, "What about you?" I released him and slowly lay back down, supporting myself. I'm not afraid either." A pair of large hands supported my lower back, helping me lie down comfortably. "Since I married you, you've never treated me poorly. Your movements at night are also extremely gentle. How could I possibly fear you? You must have your own reasons for not letting me see your true form. As long as you're willing to exchange a word or two with me in daily life, so I don't feel utterly alone, I'll be content." After this night, the river god and I were no longer silent strangers. Most of the time, I'd talk for ages while he'd only respond with a soft when I was nearly asleep, yet compared to before, we've grown so much closer. Occasionally aquatic creatures would pass by the river god temple, while basking in the sun at the temple entrance with my seaweed snacks. I intermittently overheard many stories about Evelina and Saul's loving married life. Sometimes I truly wonder if Evelina deliberately instructed them to loudly discuss her affairs with Saul whenever they passed the river god temple. The river god temple is remote, but recently the number of passing aquatic creatures has been increasing day by day. I activated during daylight. I thought I'd have to bear the child alone, but the stone statue at the center of the river god's temple rumbled the moment my breathing changed. The next moment, I was carried to bed by a tall, slender man wearing a solid mask. "My lord, why have you appeared in broad daylight?" Beneath the mask, the river god revealed panicked eyes, yet still gruffly comforted me. "Don't be afraid, I'm here, you'll deliver smoothly." Clutching my belly with a pained smile, I replied, "My lord, it's you who shouldn't fear. Our Khoi clan conceives easily, and with our advanced midwifery techniques, I can manage this myself." Half a day later, the river god steadily cradled 2 plump eggs while sitting by my bedside. I gently touched the shells of the 2 eggs. "Good, the firmness is just right. These are 2 healthy and strong eggs." After a while, I looked at the river god with concern. "My lord, I'm a koi fish. I don't know much about hatching dragon eggs." The river god replied in a whisper, afraid of startling his 2 little ones. "I understand. I'll teach you. Let's hatch them together." After speaking, he carried the 2 eggs out, still whispering to me in a hushed tone, "You rest first, I'll take care of them." Whether it was my imagination or not, the mist-like spiritual energy radiating from the river god seemed to have slightly receded in scope. Egg incubation is an extremely delicate task. Our clan had taught us how to incubate eggs, but to grow closer to the river god, I pretended to know nothing and asked for guidance with self-reproach. The river god was remarkably patient, carefully guiding me in whispers, though ultimately he spent more time incubating the egg. Ever since the egg made sounds, he never used his real voice again, treating me even better than before. The day the egg first moved, he joyfully spun me around in circles within the temple. That night, he covered the temple's night pearls and squeezed into bed with me. Our scorching breaths intertwined. Afterwards, clinging to his chest, I laughed and asked, "My lord, now that the egg can move, when will it finally hatch?" The river god patted my head and actually replied in his real voice, "It won't take long. Unlike dragonkind who need centuries or millennia, we flood dragons hatch eggs quickly." 3. In my ear, the river god's voice was no longer the gravelly, hoarse sound that scraped the throat like before, but rather the clear, gentle tone of a normal young man. I stood up in shock. "My lord, your voice." The river god pulled me back into position. "It's already healed." Just as I was about to fall asleep, the extremely silent temple suddenly echoed with the river god's voice. "My name is Riven. Don't call me lord anymore." I secretly rejoiced in my heart. All those days of tears and fragility hadn't been in vain. The river god, no, Riven, already had a place for me in his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told me his real name beyond being the river god. Pretending to be hesitant, I replied, "Then should I call you by your name directly from now on?" In the darkness, my cheek was gently pinched. "I don't want you to address me so formally either." I clasped the large hand on my face, intertwining our fingers. "All right then, Riven, my husband." Riven's breathing fluctuated for a few moments before finally steadying. During the day, Riven appeared wearing a black mask that only revealed his eyes. Ever since the 2 eggs started moving, they've been chasing after Riven's black mask and gently tapping it. Watching this made me extremely nervous, fearing that these 2 little ones might crack themselves. Riven reassured me, "The shells of dragon eggs are quite hard, they'll be fine." So I set my mind at ease, lying on the lounge chair Riven conjured for me. Watching the heartwarming interaction between the father and his 2 eggs, perhaps because I gazed at Riven for too long each day, I actually began to notice some patterns. The mist-like spiritual energy around Riven was being vigorously pounded by the 2 eggs, driving much of it back into his body. Riven's figure, originally obscured in the heavy mist, became increasingly distinct. "What are you thinking about? You seem so lost in thought," a warm voice softly asked by my ear. I instinctively replied, "I keep feeling like Dan is hammering your fog smaller and smaller. Won't they hammer you out of existence?" Riven chuckled at my words. "My wife's imagination is truly unique." He stopped laughing and suddenly grasped my hand, saying solemnly, "Lyra, you can see there are many irregularities about me. In truth, I married to alter my destined calamity. A century ago, I went to deal with the poison source of the River Muscle clan. To prevent the poison from spreading in the waters, I expended much of my spiritual power. Perhaps it was then that I was contaminated by the deadly toxin, for ever since, my spiritual energy began to leak from my body, causing my form to gradually fade, my cultivation to regress, and terrifying stone-like growths to appear on my skin." His hand touched the mask as he continued, "I divined the heavens and found a path to survival, by nurturing myself with the essence of 5 of my own bloodline. I could awaken the potential of the Dragon Serpent clan and break through this calamity." Holding the 2 eggs in my arms, I stood there in a daze. No wonder in the previous life, Riven perished and the divine temple collapsed. Since marrying the river god, Evelina has never been pregnant or given birth. The river god who hoped to break the curse through offspring now faces certain death. I asked Riven, "Will it harm the child?" Riven held my hand and said, "No, don't worry." 6. News of 2 dragon eggs being born in the river god's temple was spread to the Koi clan by passing aquatic creatures who witnessed it. My parents sent word through someone, asking me to bring the children back to visit them. After all, they're their grandchildren. I didn't want to go initially, but when the 2 eggs heard they were invited out to play, they excitedly pounded Riven all over. Riven covered the bruised blood clot on her arm. "The little one is full of energy all day long. It's time to take them out for a walk." I looked at him with concern. "Can your spiritual energy sustain you for long outside?" Riven, "Probably not before, but the 2 little ones helped me recover quite a bit of spiritual energy, enough to manage." And so, the 4 of us set off as a family. My parents didn't show much enthusiasm about my return home, but the 2 round and energetic eggs couldn't help but bring a smile to their eyes. Riven's arrival made my father extremely nervous. While making faces to scold me for not warning him that the river god would follow me back, he simultaneously bowed and invited Riven to take the seat of honor. I lowered my gaze to hide the mockery in my eyes. How strange, when you think about it carefully. Their biological daughter whom they raised themselves, am the least favored by them. Sensing my unusual emotions, Riven pried open my clenched fist, interlaced our fingers, and comforted me in a low voice. "It's my fault. Had I known this would happen, I wouldn't have persuaded you to come back." The 2 little ones also broke free from their parents' embrace and threw themselves into my arms. Suddenly, Evelina's voice came from outside the house. "Dad, Mom, we've finished the silver shrimp snacks you made for us last time. Saul and I were wondering if there's any more." Evelina entered, her gaze instantly locking onto our intertwined hands with Riven. Mother held her hand and said, "Your sister and the river god have returned. I'll make it for you tomorrow." Evelina shook off Mother's hand, staring fixedly as she spat venomously. How could you possibly win the river god's love?" Evelina lunged at me. "You must have used some vile scheme, or, he's not the river god at all, just some imposter you hired to save face." Evelina couldn't believe that I had accomplished something she failed to do in her past life. Watching Evelina rush toward me, my parents didn't stop her but instead gave me a look, signaling me to catch her properly and not let her get hurt. Just as I was about to kick at Evelina, with a bang, she suddenly flew outward several steps away from me. Riven acted before I could, sending Evelina flying. My parents glared at me and hurriedly ran outside. "Evelina, are you okay? Evelina, how did you fly out of the house?" It was Saul's voice, lazy and slow. Riven took the 2 eggs from my hands, and I led him outside together. Saul carefully helped Evelina up, and when he looked up, he saw me. "Is this Lyra?" Saul hesitated slightly. "She's grown plumper than before, and much prettier." Evelina spat out a mouthful of blood and punched Saul's chest fiercely. "Saul, what do you mean by this?" Saul clutched his chest with a frown. "Why are you hitting me? Lyra is practically like a younger sister I've watched grow up. Can't I show some concern?" Evelina pushed Saul away, her gaze quickly sweeping past Saul and Riven before finally settling on me. She seemed about to say more, but when Riven gathered spiritual energy in his hand, she swallowed her words. She punched Saul again. "You good for nothing, always thinking about eating, drinking, and having fun. Your cultivation regresses instead of advancing. Utterly useless." Saul grimaced in pain as she pummeled him. "I'm useless. My mom's been nagging us to have a baby for so long, and you still haven't gotten pregnant. You're useless too. Look at Lyra over there. She's already given birth to 2 cubs." After hurling accusations at each other, the 2 actually started brawling right then and there, with their parents unable to stop them no matter how they tried to intervene. Riven quickly took me away from that troublesome scene. Watching that earlier brawl left me in quite a cheerful mood. Evelina will probably never know why Saul's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds in his previous life. A man deeply scorned and heartbroken by his unattainable love finally found a purpose for cultivation. He wanted Evelina to regret not choosing him, so he cultivated to transform into a dragon. In this life, he's already married Evelina. What motivation would he have to cultivate now? Besides, what you can't have is always the best, once obtained. Even the most precious moonlight will turn into grains of sand beneath your feet. Saul, will you still love Evelina as faithfully as in your past life? 7. Soon, I was pregnant again. Riven crouched beside me, gently placing her hand on my abdomen, her gaze sincere and joyful. "My love, I can feel that I'm about to break through my tribulation." Sure enough, not long after, I gave birth to 3 dragon eggs. After Riven took good care of me, she finally carried the 5 eggs into her spiritual sea to overcome her tribulation. "Lyra, trust me." Riven's kiss covered the worry in my eyes. "I'll return safely with the cub." After they left, I was the only one remaining in the river god's temple. I concealed my sorrow and transformed back into my koi form to cultivate on the bed. After coupling with Riven many times, I secretly absorbed some of his cultivation through our clan's dual cultivation method. I didn't dare cultivate when he was around, but now that he's gone, I can refine these cultivation achievements without any scruples. Truly worthy of the river god's cultivation. Even stealing just a few strands greatly benefits my practice, far surpassing the speed of my own arduous cultivation. Days passed one after another, and Riven still hadn't returned. When cultivation grew tedious, I'd bring out a lounge chair to bask in the sun at the entrance of the river god's temple, snacking on treats. The number of aquatic creatures passing by the door has decreased compared to before, but they still bring me the latest news about Evelina. "Oh my, do you know about that clam spirit adopted by the Koi clan? She's causing quite a stir there, constantly pressuring her koi to cultivate into a dragon. It's like she's possessed. Why doesn't she understand? Not everyone is willing to strive. Being a lazy fish and lying flat can be quite happy too." Exactly. I heard the koi is so scared of her that he dares not go home. How pitiful. After listening to the marital battles for over a month, Evelina actually appeared at the river god's temple looking utterly exhausted. The river god's temple has a barrier. She couldn't enter and could only stare at me wide-eyed from outside the temple. "Are you alone? Where's the river god?" I got up from the lounge chair and walked inside, not intending to pay her any attention. Thus, the fleeting calculation in Evelina's eyes went unnoticed. "Sister, mother is ill, very seriously ill, and wants you to come back and see her." I continued walking inside. "Mother doesn't like me, with you by her side while she's ill." "That's enough." Behind me, Evelina said urgently, "Sister, your mother's own daughter. How could she not like you?" Mother said it herself on her sickbed. "She misses you." I turned around, staring thoughtfully at Evelina's overly gaunt face. After a while, I said, "All right, I'll go back." Returning home, Mother saw my tightly furrowed brows and said, after hitting your sister last time and running away, you still have the nerve to come back. After speaking, she coughed lightly twice, a minor illness. I smiled at Evelina, who was pretending to be calm beside me. Evelina, mother, I don't blame sister, but since she's back, she should stay for a meal before leaving. It's been a long time since you've tasted mother's cooking, right? I declined. But mother pinched me and said, don't put on airs, your sister isn't holding it against you. Another meal where I remained silent throughout. Evelina seems more like my parents' biological daughter than I do. Finally finishing the meal, I hastily bid farewell and left. On the way back to the temple, dizziness from the medication made the path ahead blurry, forcing me to lean against the coral for support. I've already avoided dishes with medicinal flavors. How is this still Chinese medicine? Behind me, Evelina's laughter rang out. The bowl you used was soaked in poison for a month, then masked with fragrant herbs. Today, I've finally got you. The blade sliced through the water as I dodged clumsily. After dozens of exchanges, Evelina gasped breathlessly, how has your cultivation improved so much? My vision had completely blurred, and as Evelina thrust again, blood floated in the water. Evelina said triumphantly, but what does it matter? No matter how strong you are, today you'll die by my hand. If the river god isn't dead, then you'll just have to die instead. Evelina lunged at me again, and I struggled to dodge with great difficulty. The pain in my chest stopped abruptly after penetrating only half an inch. Evelina exclaimed, Saul, why are you stopping me? Wait, since when have you been watching? Dazzled by the white light, I heard Saul's nonchalant voice. Right when you started, Evelina, don't kill her. Furious. Evelina blurted out, what, have you fallen for the prettier Lyra now? No, don't you always say my cultivation is low? Now there's ready-made cultivation power that can be transferred into me. The blade withdrew from my chest, and my demonic power was violently sucked outward. A sense of suffocation enveloped me, and the terrifying feelings from my previous death resurfaced in my mind. At the critical moment, I barely managed to break through, as my vision cleared momentarily. I delivered a palm strike to each of them before hastily making my way to the river god temple. Entering the barrier, I allowed myself to fall into a deep slumber with peace of mind. 8. Fortunately, the river god temple lacked nothing. Riven had even prepared ample medicinal supplies before departing. Therefore, I didn't have to desperately search for medicine during my recovery. After just a couple days of rest, my parents appeared together outside the river god's temple. Father roared, Lyra, get your ass out here, Mother shouted. How could you be such a sister, injuring Evelina and Saul for no reason? Across the river temple's barrier, I watched them coldly. They wanted to kill me. What's wrong with me fighting back? Mother pounded on the barrier. What nonsense are you spouting? You wicked girl, Evelina is such a kind and gentle person. How could she possibly want to kill you? As I turned to leave, Mother shouted again. What are you hiding in there for? Go back and apologize to Evelina. Unable to bear it any longer, I gathered demonic power in my hands and struck at my mother. Wicked daughter. My father caught my demonic energy and tried to pull me out of the barrier. Just as I was about to be dragged out of the river god's temple, the pulling force on me vanished, and my parents were sent flying by the tail of a dragon. The handsome man anxiously pulled me into his arms. Are you all right, my dear? I hesitantly called out, husband. 5 eggs whizzed past me, landing one after another on my parents. Ouch, ouch, stop hitting us. We're not bad people. We're your grandfather and grandmother. My parents were beaten and driven away. Riven held me tightly, heartbroken. Blocking the 5 restless eggs worried about me, Riven took off my clothes and carefully examined my wounds. Fingers brushed over my chest, and the wound there healed instantly. Upon learning the reason for my injury, Riven vowed to avenge me. I stopped him. Those 2 aren't worth your effort. Getting entangled in unnecessary karma would be a loss. Their retribution doesn't require our personal intervention. After my parents returned home, they grew increasingly eager for a grandchild and asked Evelina several times why she showed no signs of pregnancy. Saul's mother also repeatedly complained to Evelina. They say clam spirits have difficulty bearing children. And now I've truly witnessed it. Who knows when I'll get to hold my little grandchild. That Lyra girl is truly blessed. She's had 5 offspring in just a few years. Upon hearing this, Evelina grew even more restless and irritable. She refused to admit it was her own fertility issues, instead constantly blaming Saul, who lazed around all day. With no other choice, Saul had to flee to the neighboring river shrimp tribe. This departure unexpectedly led Saul to find his second true love. The beautiful river shrimp maiden was gentle and considerate. Never blaming him or holding grudges, only gazing at him with crystal-clear eyes full of affection, it melted Saul's heart completely. Saul rested in the river shrimp maiden's chamber, and this gossip spread through the waterways to all corners of the aquatic realm. Upon hearing this, Evelina rushed furiously to the river shrimp clan and laid hands on the maiden right in front of Saul. As a result, she was injured by Saul. Your own cultivation falls short of mine, yet you nag me daily to practice. You're spoiled and willful, never keeping me in your heart, yet you forbid me from finding a kindred spirit. Furious and humiliated, Evelina could only slink back to the Koi clan under the protective gazes of the surrounding river shrimp tribesmen. Evelina remained quiet for a long time. Not even Saul could persuade her to return home. The aquatic clans all assumed the matter was over. But I knew Evelina's temperament, she would never let this go. Sure enough, shocking news spread from the Koi clan that Evelina had murdered her parents to seize their demon cores. Father and mother aren't dead yet. With their last breath, they crawled to the river god's temple, their life hanging by a thread. Father coughed up blood and begged me, "Lyra, save us, save your parents." Mother wept bitterly, "Lyra, I was wrong. You're the only true daughter of mine. No matter how well you treat someone without blood ties, they'll always turn out to be an ungrateful wretch." I didn't come out to meet them. I had long anticipated such a scene. In her past life, Evelina could kill her parents without hesitation. In this life, she might well kill them again for her own sake. I also thought that if they stood by me even once in this life, I would shield them from this fate of death. But they didn't. They even deliberately avoided the dishes that were drugged last time. Tears fell unknowingly. Riven kissed away my tears. "Lyra, don't be sad. You have family who truly loves you." The 5 eggs emitted a faint glow, surrounding me. The parents ultimately died outside the river god's temple, and Riven manipulated the water currents to send their bodies back to the Koi clan. 9. Evelina's assassination of the river shrimp maiden escalated the situation to new heights, with the 2 demon cores of the Koi clan's chief and his wife. Evelina's cultivation rapidly increased. She stealthily infiltrated the river shrimp maiden's chamber and executed her without detection. At that time, Saul was sharing a bed with the river shrimp maiden when blood splattered all over his face. From then on, the two were completely locked in a fight to the death. Both the river shrimp clan and the Koi clan simultaneously pursued Evelina outside the river god temple. The little Koi who had come before vividly recounted these events to me. I could tell long ago that Clam Spirit was no good demon. Why on earth did the clan leader and his wife treat her so kindly? Seeing how attentively I listened, Riven opened the barrier to let the lively little Koi swim in. The little Koi swam closer to the 5 eggs and asked curiously, "Sister Lyra, when will your babies hatch?" The 5 eggs were utterly fascinated by this little brother dressed head to toe in bright red, circling around him as the Koi gently tapped each one. Both sides had fun. I took out the script I was supposed to present. "I don't know, soon maybe." I looked at Riven, and Riven gazed back at me tenderly, radiating happiness. "It will be soon." Suddenly, his expression changed. "Darling, I feel I'm about to break through. Take care of the little ones by yourself these days. I'll be back soon." With those words, he transformed into a dragon and left. The little Koi watched with starry-eyed admiration. "Wow, the river god is so majestic." I handed him some silver shrimp snacks. "When you leap over the dragon gate and successfully transform into a dragon, you'll be even more majestic than him." The little Koi nodded solemnly. "I will strive to cultivate diligently." This breakthrough took relatively little time, just 3 days. Before the pitch-black water serpent transformed into a golden, radiant dragon, Riven took human form and came skipping toward me cheerfully. "Lyra, Lyra, not only did I successfully become a dragon, but I also got promoted. From now on, I am the sea god. Pack up for a few days, we're heading to new waters." The eggs all jumped onto Riven's shoulders and head, flashing with fluorescence to offer congratulations. 2 eggs on the left shoulder, 2 on the right, and 1 on top of the head. To keep them from falling off, Riven turned his head so stiffly that I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Riven, darling, stop laughing and help me already. Leaving this century-old stream where I've lived for over 100 years fills my heart with countless emotions." Coincidentally, the little eggs expressed wanting to go out, so I took them and Riven along to bask in the sunshine and clear our minds. Who would have thought that just moments after settling down, barely having opened the snack box, the crystal-clear waters turned murky. In the chaos, Riven held me tightly. I worriedly said, "The cubs are still over there." Riven reassured me, "It's okay, I can sense they're all safe and sound over there." The murky water parted, revealing 2 demons. "Let's sleep." It turned out to be Evelina and Saul, both bearing visible injuries. Evelina's eyes flashed with hatred when she saw me, but Riven by my side made her hesitate. Yet when her gaze fell upon the eggs nearby, she swiftly shot out a massive pearl from her hand. Both Riven and I paled. Riven's dragon tail lashed toward Evelina while I lunged toward the eggs. Amidst the clamor, I distinctly heard the faint sound of eggshells cracking. My heart instantly clenched, and as a sliver of unease arose in my mind, 5 small flood dragons of different colors flew out from the murky waters, safe and sound. No. How could none of them be crushed? Evelina clutched her chest, vomiting large mouthfuls of blood while staring at the 5 little ones with resentment and envy. I don't have a single child. How dare you have 5 healthy ones? Evelina attacked again, and I mobilized my demonic energy to counter her strike. My heart overflowed with endless dread as Evelina was pinned in place by my demonic energy, unable to move. Demonic power boils around me, and fear flashes in Evelina's eyes. No, no. She tries to retreat, but finds no escape. Just as I'm about to strike her down, a golden gate rises from the water's surface. Yes, the dragon gate. I glanced at Riven, who gave me a slight nod, so I leaped upward and swam with all my might. With my heart set on my goal, I swam faster and faster. Finally, I leaped and became a dragon. When I returned underwater, Evelina remained pinned in place. You've transformed into a dragon. Evelina's expression froze in utter shock. How is this possible? You weren't supposed to be the one to transform, I sneered. Shouldn't it be me, or is it Saul? Evelina's pupils instantly dilated. You too. I grabbed her by the neck and flung her violently towards Saul, who was cowering in the corner. After the river shrimp girl was killed, Saul found the motivation for revenge, and his cultivation level eventually improved, allowing him to fight evenly with Evelina, who had seized 2 demon cores. I looked at Saul. Didn't you want to kill her to avenge the river shrimp girl? I've delivered her right to you. Don't tell me you don't dare to do it. Saul's eyes burned with hatred as he pulled out a sharp trident. How could I not? With Evelina's neck half crushed in my grip, she couldn't even cry for help before dying at Saul's hands, her head tilted to the side, eyes wide open, staring fixedly in my direction. Die with eyes wide open, Saul thanked me. And I remained silent. Riven came over to hug me, comforting me without words. Before leaving, Saul passed by 5 confused little drakes. The little dragon didn't like him and kept backing away one by one. Saul glanced at them and suddenly reached out to grab them, catching the scene out of the corner of my eye. I pushed Riven aside, transformed into my dragon form, and smashed him to pieces with my tail. How could a demon who once tried to steal my cultivation be a good one? The little dragonlings pounced on me with pitiful whimpers, their baby voices accusing Saul. Mommy, this bad man wants to catch and eat us to nourish himself. We're so scared. I held them in my arms, tears streaming uncontrollably. It's okay now. It's okay. Mommy will protect you. All the emotions erupted at this moment. I cried until the heavens and earth seemed to darken. After packing everything, Riven and I moved together to the sea territory where Riven was assigned, after settling the father and his 5 sons. I left the sea area and headed for the Divine Realm. Riven was extremely reluctant, even while handling official duties in the Divine Realm. Don't forget to come home and visit. I nodded with a smile and kissed his lips. The 5 little dragon hybrids saw it and stared at me eagerly. Only after receiving a forehead kiss from each one of them was I finally allowed out the door. The road ahead is long, but knowing they're waiting for me at home makes every view more beautiful. Story 2. The end of the world has arrived, and my mother-in-law sold the supplies I had hoarded. I tried desperately to stop her, but I was brutally beaten by my husband. When my son got sick, I was infected while taking care of him alone. However, my son refused to give me medicine. I had a high fever that made me mentally impaired, and they exchanged my body for food, just as the end of the world was about to end. In order to cover up their crimes, they turned me into food. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself 10 days before the outbreak of the apocalypse. 1. The pain of the knife slashing across my neck hadn't faded away yet. My husband, Elias, my son, Easton, and my mother-in-law pounced on me and started tearing at me ravenously. I watched helplessly as they treated me like food. My eyes gradually dimmed, and I lost consciousness completely. When I was in a daze, I heard Elias's voice in my ear. Genevieve, wash the dishes as soon as you're done eating. Didn't he kill me? How could I still hear his vicious voice? I opened my eyes and saw Elias's impatient face. What was going on here? The time on the clock showed that it was 10 days before the end of the world happened. On this day, because of a cold, after cooking dinner, I fell asleep on the sofa when Elias woke me up to wash the dishes. The spare herbs and large shrimps I had cooked had already been eaten by them. There were only a few remaining green leafy vegetables that had been picked over and the vegetable soup at the bottom of the plate left. None of my family members cared whether I was sick or whether there was enough food left for me to eat. It turned out that I had been reborn, too. Before being reborn, I worked at the city infectious diseases hospital. At first, several delirious patients were brought in. After they died, they came back to life and turned into monsters without the ability to feel pain. As the situation developed, more and more patients were brought in. The patients were like the zombies in the movies. I was worried that it would turn into another situation similar to the mask incident. I quickly bought a large number of canned goods and instant foods from an online supermarket and asked my husband, Elias, to pick up our son and bring him home. I myself rushed home in a hurry with a large quantity of commonly used medications. As soon as I entered the house, my mother-in-law said with dissatisfaction on her face, "What did you buy all these things for? You're wasting my son's money. Return them all immediately." I immediately explained, hoping that the whole family could work together to get through the end of the world. My mother-in-law had a mocking expression on her face, looking as if she had seen through me, the end of the world. "I think you're just lazy and don't want to cook." I didn't have time to explain more, so I could only perfunctorily say, "Mom, I'm going to buy some more things first. I'll talk to you when I get back." My husband stopped me from leaving and said, "Mom wants to sell these things for the sake of the family. You should understand her. Honey, you have to trust me. Organize the supplies, and we'll talk about it when I get back." When I came back home after buying the riot gear, I found that the hoarded supplies were gone. My mother-in-law was sitting on the sofa, crossing her legs, giving me a triumphant glance and counting the money happily. I couldn't hold back the despair and anger in my heart and shouted, "Why did you sell my things?" Elias said unhappily, "That's my mom." My eyes were red, and I stared at him, asking with a sob, "That's our life-saving stuff. Why didn't you listen to me? Why?" Elias looked embarrassed and didn't know how to explain. My mother-in-law said leisurely, "A man being bossed around by his wife, what kind of future does he have? If our relatives knew about it, they'd all laugh at you." Elias was provoked by my mother-in-law. He kicked me to the ground, punched and kicked me, and knocked me unconscious. 3. My mother-in-law and my husband left me lying on the ground. When I woke up, my mother-in-law spat at me and said, "Bah, you junk stuff. You caused the family to lose 10,000 yuan." I was in so much pain all over my body from the beating that I couldn't move, not even having the strength to get up. My phone rang, and I struggled to take it out and answer it. My son Easton's crying voice came from the phone, "Mom, come and save me quickly. There are biting monsters everywhere in the school." I suddenly looked at Elias and said, "You didn't go to pick up the child." Elias didn't dare to look me in the eye. He turned his head guiltily and then angrily cursed. "You knew there was danger. Why didn't you go to pick him up? Son, don't be afraid. Mom is coming to pick you up right away." I wiped the blood from my forehead and put on the riot gear. "My child is my life. I would crawl there to save him even if I had to. If you take the protective gear away, what are we going to do when we go out?" Elias grabbed my arm and forbade me from taking the newly bought riot gear. My mother-in-law urged, "Hurry up and save Easton. If you don't bring my grandson back safely, you can just die outside." I angrily threw the riot gear on the ground and rushed out of the house. In my previous life, I was lucky enough to bring my son home safely, but I ended up saving an ungrateful person, for Elias was sitting on the other side of the sofa. Seeing that I didn't respond, he kicked me and ordered, "Hurry up and finish eating, then wash the dishes." My mother-in-law was picking her teeth, with oil all over her mouth. Watching TV leisurely, my son was playing games on his phone. I got up and picked up my bag, saying, "I'm not feeling well. I'm going to the hospital." Elias said unhappily, "Wash the dishes first before you go." My mother-in-law also mumbled, "Going to the hospital for a minor illness, so delicate." I slammed the door angrily and left, afraid that if I walked any slower, I wouldn't be able to resist slapping them in the face. When I was young, I was attracted to good-looking men and was fascinated by the handsome Elias. When I discovered his true nature, I kept putting up with it because of the child, and it had dragged on until now. If it weren't for the wrong timing, I would have gotten rid of these heartless people in this family immediately. 5. I had a delicious dinner and then lay on the soft bed of a 5-star hotel. I was looking for a satisfactory house online. Soon, I took a fancy to a property. There were only 8 buildings in the community. Each building had 2 elevators for 2 households. It was located in the suburban area, and the occupancy rate was low. I contacted the real estate agent overnight, booked the penthouse, and looked for a house renovation company. With my profession as a doctor, I borrowed 1 million yuan from various online lending platforms. I also contacted the bank to mortgage the house, together with hundreds of thousands of yuan in savings. The funds in my hand reached 3 million yuan. With a large sum of money invested, the house renovation company quickly reinforced the house I rented. An anti-breach steel door was added inside the entrance door, and one-way film was pasted on all the glass. Steel mesh was installed in the windows to ensure that it looked the same on the outside, but the protection inside was comparable to that of a bank. Solar panels were installed on the roof, and energy storage batteries were placed inside the house. During the construction period, I bought a large number of supplies: compressed biscuits, self-heating dry rations, small hot pots, meat canned goods, and fruit canned goods, self-defense weapons such as gasoline, alcohol, a continuous shooting bow, knives, and stun guns, equipment such as generators, maritime satellite video transmission systems, solar panels, and surveillance cameras. Medicines, vitamins, and dog food were also indispensable. 6. The next evening, I returned home. Elias didn't care about my health and ordered, "You slammed the door yesterday and made Mom angry, apologize and then go cook." My mother-in-law was cracking sunflower seeds, looking triumphant, as if saying that her son was still on her side. I walked up to my mother-in-law, suppressing the feeling of nausea, and smiled. "Mom, I signed up for a tour group. The whole family can go and relax." My son cheered, and Elias also showed an expression that said, "You're sensible." My mother-in-law squinted at me with her triangular eyes and sneered, "You're smart enough." Under the pretext of calming my mother-in-law down, I took them out to eat. Do they think I'll cook for them again? They don't deserve it. I've given selflessly all these years, but all I got was them pushing their luck. They took my efforts for granted. The money I earned was considered family income. The money Elias earned was regarded as hard-earned money. Who doesn't work hard to make money nowadays? I finally realized clearly that a lot of evil comes from genes. No one can change those evil people. The only way is to stay away from them. 7. On the day of the trip, I made an excuse that there was an urgent matter at the hospital and didn't join the tour group. Their family went on the trip happily. I asked the construction team to enter immediately and installed hidden surveillance cameras all over the house. Small-scale solar panels and storage batteries were installed on the roof to supply power to the surveillance cameras and the maritime satellite video system, to ensure that even after the power went out in the apocalypse, I could still see what was going on at home, after everything was done. I informed Elias that I was going on a business trip to another place and left with my beloved dog, Jojo. I threw the keys away. I would never come back to this home again. 8. 3 days after they returned from the trip, they didn't call me even once. The situation on the streets was getting more and more chaotic, and cases of people getting injured occurred from time to time. The police shot and killed the rabid zombies on the spot, and for a while, the situation was brought under control. But I knew that things were far from that simple. Finally, when the time came to the moment when the end of the world happened again, more than half of humanity, regardless of their jobs, lost consciousness at the same time. People around suddenly fainted, causing panic among everyone. The airplanes in the sky crashed towards the ground. The cars lost control, either running over the fainted people or crashing into a ball of fire. People were crying and wailing. The conscious people went to help the fainted ones. When people saw the zombies with their bodies twisted out of shape crawling out of the crashed cars, when the zombies that had been flattened like pancakes suddenly bit the people next to them, people finally realized something was wrong and screamed and fled in all directions. The zombies were sensitive to sound and chased after the panicked people, knocking them down one by one and biting off pieces of their flesh and blood. I stood on the rooftop, calmly watching all this. It seemed that humanity was being punished, and the virus broke out collectively at this moment. The end of the world had begun. 9. The red soup was boiling in the pot. I picked up a slice of meat, blanched it for 7 seconds, and immediately picked it up and ate it. The slices of meat were tender and delicious, with a strong aroma of chili. Jojo was lying on the ground, struggling with a big bone, when I was enjoying my meal happily. Elias made a video call. "Wife, where are you? Is the hospital safe? I miss you, and so does our son. Come back quickly." It was the end of the world, and there were crashed cars and man-eating zombies everywhere on the street. Asking me to go back at this time really meant they didn't care about my life at all. I picked up the wine glass, took a sip of red wine, turned the camera around, and filmed the food on the table. There were hairy crabs, Australian lobsters, abalones, countless precious ingredients. I lazily replied, "I'm too full to move." My mother-in-law pushed Elias aside and said in a sharp voice, "Bring all these back immediately and let us eat them." Genevieve, my mom is old and gets emotional easily. Our son is also hungry. Come back and cook for us quickly. Every time my mother-in-law lost her temper, Elias would say soft words. One played the bad cop, and the other played the good cop, manipulating me for more than a decade. I earned so much money for the family, but I never got a single kind word from them. No, spending the money on myself, eating and drinking well, it feels great. Sure enough, when money is spent in the right place, it brings happiness. Spending it on heartless people can only bring endless pain. I smiled and said, "You have your mom, let your mom cook for you." Elias asked in disbelief, "You don't care about me? But don't you care about our son either, trying to use our son to coerce me?" I retorted, "Why doesn't the son's father cook? Is he dead?" Elias was so angry that he couldn't say a word. My son was drooling over the food and shouted, "All these are mine, if you don't give them to me to eat. When you die in the future, I'll feed you to the wild dogs." This was the son I had painstakingly raised, accompanying him to all kinds of interest classes and tutoring classes. It would have been better to spend the money on myself. Getting beauty treatments and having afternoon tea with my sisters, I was too lazy to look at the ugly faces of this family. I hung up the phone and continued to enjoy myself. Before long, the power would go out, and these things couldn't be preserved. There was a knock on the door. I didn't dare to respond. I hugged Jojo tightly and forbade it from making a sound. In the end of the world, people's hearts were unpredictable. In order to survive, they could do anything. Seeing that I didn't respond for a long time, a fierce man's voice came from outside the door. "Open the door. I know there's someone inside. Don't force me to break the door down." Afraid that the door would be damaged, I opened a small crack. The man was big and burly, with a skull tattoo on his arm. He didn't look like a good person at all. Before I could ask, he pushed the door open forcefully and swaggered in. His eyes swept over the food on the table and then over the mountains of supplies. His eyes were filled with greed. He sat on the sofa, sized up my body, and had a sinister smile on his face. "You're a bit old, but considering you've prepared so many things for me, Donovan will protect you from now on." He patted his thigh. "Come over here and pour me a glass of wine." It was obvious that he intended to take over my supplies and keep me for his amusement. The name Donovan was very well known in the later stage of the apocalypse. He gathered a group of reckless hooligans in the suburban area and robbed supplies everywhere. He killed the men and took the women back for his pleasure. After getting tired of them, he would take the women out as bait. Unexpectedly, at the very beginning of the apocalypse, I had encountered this scumbag. I obediently walked over. Donovan picked up the chopsticks and put an abalone into the pot, looking triumphant. Unfortunately, he was being triumphant too early. I took out the stun gun and jabbed it at him. Donovan was electrocuted and trembled all over, sliding off the sofa. I electrocuted him for a full minute until his skin gave off a burnt smell before I stopped. Donovan's body twitched from time to time, and disgusting saliva flowed out of the corner of his mouth. I tied him up tightly and threw him aside. 10. When Donovan woke up and saw Jojo baring its teeth, he was so scared that he leaned back and hit his head against the wall. The pain ignited his ferocity, and he stared at me with dangerous eyes. I squatted in front of him and tapped his cheek with a knife. Donovan didn't think that a woman in a harmonious society would kill someone and asked disdainfully, "Do you dare to kill? If not, let me go." I sneered, put on my protective gear, and dragged him towards the balcony. Roaring sounds and the clanking of chains came from the balcony. A zombie was waving its claws and teeth through the balcony door. Donovan was terrified and couldn't believe his eyes. I caught this one specially from downstairs. "You can get along with him well." Donovan finally realized that he had provoked not a weak woman but a living devil. He kept begging me to let him go, promising that he would never trouble me again afterwards. At the beginning of the apocalypse, people hadn't yet despaired because of the end of the world and still had a basic respect for the law. However, I had seen how humans resorted to any means to survive in the apocalypse. There was no need for a saint in the end of the world. I opened the door and pushed Donovan in. 11. When Elias contacted me, I was eating beef jerky and watching a drama while hugging Jojo. I answered the video call. Elias, my son, and my mother-in-law crowded in front of the camera, looking gaunt. I casually fed a piece of beef jerky to Jojo. My mother-in-law's triangular eyes widened, and she scolded me with a look of great distress and indignation. "Are you even human? Your husband and son are still hungry. Yet you're feeding the dog. Bring the food back immediately," my son said pitifully. "Mom, I want to eat too. I'm so hungry," Elias also persuaded. "Our son is almost starving to death. Wife, we need you." I sighed and showed a helpless expression. "If your grandma hadn't stopped me from buying dry food every time, you wouldn't be hungry now." In the past, whenever I bought instant noodles or self-heating food, my mother-in-law would scold me for feeding the family junk food and said I was trying to harm our son, and that I had to cook instead. It was as if the food cooked by my hands that used to hold a scalpel to save lives would be more nutritious. If I bought too many groceries, she would scold me for being wasteful. If I bought too much rice, she would say it took up too much space and that we should buy it only when we needed it. Well, now it's fine. I guess my son has eaten up all his snacks. My son glared at my mother-in-law fiercely and cursed. "It's all your fault, you old hag. You didn't let Mom buy anything. You always make Mom do the work and scold her. Now she won't come back. Look, my son, who's in junior high school, actually knows everything. It's just that before, it had nothing to do with him, so he didn't care that I was being tortured." My mother-in-law doted on her grandson. Usually, it was always grandma is good and grandson is good. This was the first time she was cursed by her grandson. Without thinking, she directly slapped Easton in the face. Easton wasn't going to be outdone. He kicked his grandmother down and said, "Mom, you can go home without worry. Don't be afraid of her. I'll protect you." I smiled. It had only been a week since the end of the world started, and the power hadn't gone out yet, but their ugly true colors had already been revealed. I picked up Jojo, stroked its soft fur, and fed it beef jerky, saying, "There's too much stuff to carry. You can come to me if you want." Elias and my son fell silent. The brave ones had already gone out onto the streets to kill zombies and find food. However, they didn't dare to. In my previous life, they had the courage to kill me, but they didn't have the courage to face the zombies outside. Elias hesitated for a long time and then said timidly, "It's too dangerous outside. I'm afraid something will happen to our son. Bring the food back, and we can wait for rescue together." Rescue? There won't be any. The power is going to go out soon too. They're afraid of dying, but they're not afraid that something will happen to me on my way back. I gave them a final reminder: adjust the walkie-talkie at home to frequency 8 to contact me. Before leaving home, I prepared walkie-talkies and solar panels. They were my closest and most beloved family members. Even if the power went out, we couldn't lose contact. 12. Half a month after the end of the world occurred, the power in the city had already gone out, relying on solar energy. I still watched dramas and played with the dog every day, without work or housework, and with sufficient food and water. I was extremely happy. In my spare time, I watched Elias's situation through the surveillance cameras to pass the time. Elias couldn't stand the hunger and bought food at a high price. A steamed bun cost 500 yuan, and a bowl of rice cost 1,000 yuan. As time went by, the price of food became more and more expensive. Elias used all my gold and silver jewelry to exchange for a pack of instant noodles. My son was so hungry that his eyes turned blue, and he stretched out his hand, saying, "Give it to me quickly." Elias refused. "I'm the breadwinner. I need to have the strength to find food for you guys." Elias wolfed down the instant noodles without even having time to put in the seasoning packet. "Give it to me. I'm hungry." My son was used to being bossy and tried to grab it. He didn't care about the future. He couldn't stand the idea of others being full while he was hungry. Elias didn't let go. While they were struggling over it, the crumbs of the instant noodles spilled out of the bag. My mother-in-law crawled on the ground and quickly picked up the crumbs and stuffed them into her mouth. My son wasn't as strong as Elias. Out of anger, he opened his mouth and bit him. Elias's arm was bitten until it bled, and he let go in pain. My son snatched the instant noodles, just as he took a bite. He was knocked down by Elias's punch. In my previous life, they exchanged me for food and never complained that my mother-in-law had sold the supplies I had hoarded. No, over a pack of instant noodles, the so-called father-son harmony completely fell apart. My son contacted me while crying, "Mom." He took my food and hit me. "Come and pick me up quickly." When I took care of his studies, it was as if I had done something extremely offensive. He was annoyed with me and hated me. Elias treated him like a pet. When he was in a good mood, he would play with him and let him eat snacks without limit, and then he would like his father. Now that he's been beaten, he knows to look for his mom. "Son, listen." I poured a glass of cola. The sound of the cola fizzing was transmitted through the walkie-talkie. "Jojo is drinking milk and eating beef. I have everything here." My voice was full of temptation. "You're not allowed to drink the cola, and you're not allowed to feed Jojo. It's all mine. Everything is mine." My son roared jealously. My greedy and stupid son, not even knowing my address yet, was already being possessive of the food. 13. Jojo rested its head on my leg, wagging its tail happily. Once evil starts, it's very difficult to stop. Elias slapped his son to the ground and cursed, "You idiot. You don't even know your mom's address yet, and you've already made her ignore you. What's the use of raising such a useless person like you? You're not even as good as Jojo. Jojo can even be killed and eaten for meat. Keep trying to contact her. If your mom ignores you, I'll beat you to death." My son lay on the ground, looking at him with hatred in his eyes. My mother-in-law looked at my son with a flickering gaze, her eyes full of an unclear meaning. I turned off the walkie-talkie and stopped contacting them. It's not enough. The pressure the end of the world has brought them is not enough. 14. 3 months later, it became increasingly difficult to find supplies. For a bite of food, killing had become the norm, and the evil of human nature was fully revealed. The brave ones went to places like supermarkets, granaries, and restaurants that had a large amount of food. Those who didn't dare to face the zombies pried open doors from house to house in search of food. Fortunately, there were few people in my community, and I only encountered people trying to pry open the door twice. Each time, I would lead Donovan and another zombie into the living room. The roars of the zombies would scare away the intruders. Donovan had kept his promise and protected me. Elias and his family had barely managed to survive until now by prying open doors. My mother-in-law, who was 155 meters tall and weighed 80 kilograms before, had now become as thin as a skeleton. Elias and my son were also extremely emaciated, with sunken cheeks, as frail as Lin Dayu. If I didn't insist on exercising and practicing yoga every day, I would have gained 10 kilograms. One night, my mother-in-law secretly pulled Elias into the kitchen. "Son, We haven't found anything to eat for 3 days. I'm so hungry, Elias said impatiently. What can I do? That damn Genevieve isn't saying anything either. I don't know if she's dead outside. My mother-in-law glanced in the direction of the bedroom, and words as devilish as they could be came out of her mouth. Kill Easton, and the two of us can survive. He offended his wife. That's why she's ignoring us. If he's dead, his wife will calm down. We'll go find her and live comfortably from then on. Hesitation appeared in Elias's eyes. After all, that was his own son. My mother-in-law continued to coax him. Don't you want to eat meat? My son couldn't fall asleep because of hunger. Hearing the sound of them going into the kitchen, he thought they were stealing food and followed them. After hearing this, he couldn't hold back anymore. He kicked open the kitchen door and rushed in like a mad bull, knocking his grandmother to the ground. He picked up a kitchen knife and stabbed his grandmother's body again and again. Elias looked at his son's ferocious face and took 2 steps back in fear. My son held the knife and looked at Elias with blood-red eyes. Eat. 15. Elias called me every day. Wife, my mom is dead. No one will bully you anymore. Where are you? I miss you. Look, he always knew that I was being bullied and endured humiliation for the sake of our son. It's just that the pain didn't fall on him. So he didn't know what it was like. Now this hypocritical display of affection was just an act for the sake of survival. Who can't act? I picked up the walkie-talkie. Husband, I have a lot of food here. Come to me quickly. Elias fell silent. Coming to find me was risky, and he could die at any moment, but if he didn't come, he would starve to death. He was caught in a dilemma. I suggested, find more neighbors to come with you. I have a lot of supplies stored up. Elias's eyes lit up. As long as he didn't reveal the location, the neighbors would have to protect them for the sake of food. Wife, you're amazing. After his excitement subsided, he reminded me, people's hearts are unpredictable. Hide the food and just leave a little for the neighbors to eat. I agreed and told him the address. I'm at room 401, Unit 1, Building 3, Lishue Homeland, 16. Elias contacted the neighbors and painted a picture of a paradise for them. There was plenty of food, few zombies, and a beautiful environment. I used to think that only capitalists knew how to make empty promises, but it turned out he could do it too. These people who were on the verge of starving to death fawned over Elias in order to go to this dream place, fearing that they would be left behind. Elias was full of himself and made those who wanted to go pay with food as an entrance fee. If they really couldn't produce any food, they could use women instead. After bossing people around for 2 days, he gathered more than 50 people and set off in over 10 cars. I didn't care how many of these people could make it to Lishue Homeland alive. 17. In my previous life, when I saved my son, he was shaking all over and covered in cold sweat from fear. After we got home, he had a high fever. My mother-in-law and Elias were afraid that Easton had been infected with the zombie virus and refused to take care of him. They wanted to throw him outside and let him fend for himself. With my insistence, they locked us in the master bedroom and made me take care of my son alone. I gave him medicine and wiped his whole body with a wet towel. After taking care of him for 2 days and 2 nights, my son's fever subsided, but I was infected. I was delirious from the fever and weak all over. I asked my son to bring me some antipyretics. My son looked at the remaining 3 bottles of ibuprofen and left the room with the medicine. Elias asked if I had taken the medicine. My son asked indifferently, what if we get sick in the future? Elias was silent. My mother-in-law agreed. Easton really has long-term vision. Your mom is an adult and has a strong resistance. The whole family happily went to eat and stopped caring about me. They didn't even help me with physical cooling, until I had several febrile convulsions and my brain was damaged, turning me into a person with intellectual disabilities. When they saw that I was useless, in order to save food, they didn't give me anything to eat and starved me until I was on the verge of death. Before I died, they found that there was no more food. My mother-in-law suggested, she's going to die anyway, it's better to exchange her body for food. Elias couldn't quite accept it. He still had some sense of shame and didn't want to be cuckolded. My mother-in-law encouraged him again. What are you hesitating for? Because of a fool, after the end of the world is over, Mom will find you a young and beautiful girl to marry. Elias happily agreed. My son wanted to refuse, but when his grandmother asked him whether he wanted to eat or keep his foolish mother, he silently went back to his room. Since then, male neighbors kept coming in and out of my room. At first, they left a pack of instant noodles, and later, it was even just a piece of biscuit. It wasn't until the vaccine was successfully developed, the power was restored, and the end of the world was coming to an end that they turned me into food to completely cover up their crimes. After being reborn, I also remembered the things that happened during the time when I had intellectual disabilities. Whether it was Elias's family or those male neighbors, they all deserved to die. 18. 5 tattered cars, stained with blood, crashed through the gate of the fire passage and drove into the community. Dozens of zombies followed behind the cars. The 5 cars drove around in circles, knocking down and running over the zombies. Elias and his son got out of the cars under the protection of the neighbors. He looked around at the surroundings, wearing a proud smile on his face, and stamped his feet hard, saying, "Neighbors, what do you think of this place?" The neighbors all flattered him. The original residents of the community secretly lifted the curtains to check on the intruders. Elias didn't care about the original residents of the community. He waved his hand arrogantly and said loudly, "Come on, I'll take you to eat." The crowd had been so hungry that their eyes were red. They followed him in a mighty procession. Elias stood at the door of room 401, under the expectant gazes of the neighbors. Elias knocked hard on the door. "Open the door." The door didn't open. My son shouted, "Mom, it's me. Open the door quickly." There was still no response from inside the room. The neighbors looked at Elias, their eyes shining with a dangerous light. Half of the people had died on the way here for this meal. If Elias dared to deceive them, they would make him know what it meant to be worse than dead. Elias banged on the door, but it still didn't open. A neighbor grabbed Elias by the collar and asked sharply, "Are you lying to us and making us protect you here?" His wife had been bitten by a zombie on the way here, and he couldn't accept being deceived. Elias was filled with fear. He picked up the walkie-talkie and called, "Wife, my son and I are here. Open the door quickly." I smiled and turned off the walkie-talkie and observed through the surveillance camera. After countless calls brought despair, the neighbor punched Elias down. Just as the other neighbors were about to rush forward, Elias shouted, "Wait a minute, maybe something happened to my wife. Let's break the door down." The neighbor threatened viciously, "If there's no food inside, you're dead meat." The neighbors pushed Elias and his son aside and started to break down the door. 19. After breaking down the door, there was a copper hot pot and a speaker on the dining table. There were charcoal, a lighter, a large bucket of mineral water, and spicy hot pot base on the ground. People rushed into the room and searched everywhere. They didn't find any trace of me, but in the kitchen, they found a freezer that was still working. There were 10 bags of sliced mutton neatly arranged in the freezer. "There's food." The neighbors excitedly set up the pot, boiled water, put in the hot pot base, and started to cook the hot pot. "Your wife prepared it quite well. She even left a speaker to play music." They didn't know that if it weren't for the speaker, through which I could remotely play the roars of the zombies, the things here would have been gone long ago. Elias stepped forward arrogantly, trying to push aside the neighbor in front of him and be the first to eat. The neighbor pushed him away forcefully and said with dissatisfaction, "What are you pushing for? Get out of the way." Elias said unhappily, "How dare you push me? This is my stuff." The neighbor sneered, "This is the reward we deserve for protecting you here. If you want to eat, go find your wife." The neighbors formed a circle. Before the slices of meat were cooked, they picked them up and ate them. My son couldn't squeeze in, so he could only stretch his arm in. As soon as he picked up a piece of meat, he quickly stuffed it into his mouth, not caring at all that it was scalding hot. Elias put aside his pride as the temporary leader and joined the group scrambling for the meat. The smell of the spicy hot pot wafted out through the windows in the door. Declan in the community smelled the aroma and came out of his house. In the previous life, Declan from Lishue community was very well known. He graduated from a martial arts school. Relying on his good fighting skills, he gathered a group of subordinates and went around robbing, killing, and committing all kinds of evil. Declan led more than 20 subordinates, brandishing machetes and heading straight for room 401. Elias and the others were enjoying their meal happily, but 10 bags of sliced mutton were simply not enough. Just as everyone was calculating how they could eat more, Declan and his men stood at the door. Declan pointed his knife at the neighbors and said, "Stop eating and get out of here." The slices of meat were the lifeblood of the neighbors. Asking them to give up eating the meat was no different from taking their lives. The neighbors had gone through the baptism of the journey and had become bolder. They dared to kill zombies, let alone people. Get lost. Declan was cursed at, and he swung his knife and killed the person who had cursed him. The other neighbors picked up their weapons and rushed forward, engaging in a fierce battle. In the heat of the fight, the boiling hot pot was even overturned. Soon, the neighbors and my son all fell in a pool of blood. Declan's subordinates dragged Elias, who was hiding in the toilet, out. Declan, with burns all over his face, looked sinister and swung his knife to chop. Elias's pants were wet, and he shouted, "Don't kill me. My wife has hidden a large amount of food. My wife is good looking. She's a doctor and can treat your injuries." The machete stopped above his head. Extensive burns were difficult to treat even in normal times, not to mention in the apocalypse when there was a shortage of medical supplies and doctors. Declan asked coldly, "Where is your wife? Her walkie-talkie might be out of power, and I can't get in touch with her for now. When I manage to contact her, I'll take you there, boss. Elias was like a sycophant, only lacking a wagging tail. If you dare to deceive me, I'll chop you into pieces and feed you to the zombies. 20. Room 401 had solar power supply, so Declan and the others chose to stay. Elias kept contacting me without a moment's rest. Wife, answer me quickly if you hear me. I felt that the time was about right and lazily replied, I'm here, wife. I've arrived at the place, but I didn't see you. Where are you? I sneered and asked. Tell you the location so that you can bring people to rob me. Elias lied blatantly. My son and I got rid of the others. It's just the two of us. Elias, the way you're groveling for your life makes me sick. Your son is already dead. Why don't you go down and accompany him? Declan and Elias searched around and found a hidden surveillance camera. Declan snatched the walkie-talkie and threatened, tell me your address right away, or I'll chop him up. I said indifferently, okay. Declan cut off one of Elias's fingers. Will you tell me or not? Go on. Declan wielded the knife again. After several consecutive times, Elias was crying bitterly. Declan also realized that he couldn't threaten me and was about to kill Elias to vent his anger. Elias pleaded, Boss, let me go. I can make hot pot for you guys. Declan slapped him in the face. You've eaten all the meat. Where is there any meat left? Elias looked at the ground. Declan understood. But he didn't want to dirty his hands. He led his subordinates into the room to play with their phones and left the scene to Elias. Elias prepared everything. Declan and his subordinates started eating, and Elias served them by the side, not even having the right to eat. Soon, Declan's stomach ached terribly. He pointed at Elias and cursed, You son of a bitch, how dare you poison us? I'll chop you to death. Elias grabbed the walkie-talkie and turned to run. Declan and the others were all poisoned and fell to the ground, too weak to chase after him. 21. I thought Elias would die outside, but unexpectedly, a day later, I heard his voice calling again. He pleaded, apologized, and played the victim. He kept trying to win my sympathy. 3 days later, Elias said feebly, Wife, I'm going to die. I want to see you one last time. I agreed and told him the real address. When Elias appeared at the door, he was covered in blood and looked extremely. I saw that he didn't have any weapons and carefully opened the door. As soon as Elias entered the room, he grabbed my neck and said sinisterly, You bitch, go to hell. I jabbed the stun gun under his ribcage. In an instant, he was electrocuted and trembled all over. When he fell, he pulled me down with him. He thought that we were both electrocuted at the same time, and as a man, he would recover faster and be able to get up before me. The patients were like the zombies in the movies. And I was worried that it would turn into another situation similar to the mask incident. Jojo suddenly rushed up and started biting him. Elias cursed, You damned dog, get out of the way, scram. Amidst his curses, I easily stood up. Jojo, come back. Jojo stood beside me, looking at Elias menacingly. Before he could beg for mercy, I jabbed the stun gun at him again and cursed, I'm wearing insulated shoes, you fool. Elias pleaded, Wife, I was wrong, let me stay, I'll treat you well. Don't worry, all these things will be yours. I'll take Jojo and leave. I picked up the rope on the ground and held it in my hand. Elias had a bad feeling. Following the rope with his eyes, he saw that the other end was tied to the doorknob of the balcony. You managed to deal with Declan. You can handle Donovan, who is as notorious as him too. Come on. I gave a hard tug, and the balcony door opened. Donovan and another zombie smelled the smell of blood on Elias and pounced on him. Goodbye, no. I mean, never see you again. I ran out of the room with Jojo and closed the door. Elias's curses and screams came from inside the room. At this moment, the lights in the corridor turned on, and the power was restored. This meant that the vaccine had been successfully developed, and the army had started to reclaim the city. 22. The end of the world had ended. The sun shone on the earth. Dispelling the haze of the past few months, humans were tenacious and resilient. They quickly restored order and resumed work in production. I became a doctor again. I decided not to remarry, focused on saving people, and was independent and beautiful.